can see the people over here. Just a little. Yeah. We'll need, yeah, that's good. Right there. Yep. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Continuing in Al-Wajiz في فقه السنة والكتاب العزيز, the book of fasting, the chapter regarding the pillars of fasting. Now, we mentioned that fasting has two pillars: intention, which we discussed in detail yesterday, and the second pillar, refraining from anything that would break a person's fast. We mentioned that there are 6 things which will break a person's fast. And today, inshallah ta'ala, we want to expand our knowledge on these 6 things. So when we say there are 6 things that will break a person's fast, and we listed them, each of these 6 things has things that are added to its definition and things that are excluded from its definition. And this is what we want to discuss today. So the first and second things that would break a person's fast: eating and drinking purposely. The author says, al-aklu wa-shurbu amdan. Now, eating and drinking. The human being is linguistically, in the Arabic language, only known to have eaten something, or it is said that this person has eaten something if something goes down the throat. This is the natural path that food and drink takes. And that's what is intended when the scholars of fiqh say eating or drinking anything purposely. It doesn't just mean food. It means anything that takes the path of food and drink, which is the throat, right? This is what takes the path of food and drink. Whatever it is, whether it's food or not, the issue is not what is being eaten or drank. The issue is the act itself. So in the Arabic language, you would say akala aw shariba. Someone ate something or drank something once it takes the path of the throat, down the esophagus into the stomach. This is linguistically what is known as eating or drinking. What's the difference between eating and drinking? Nothing. It's just that eating is something that's usually solid or something that is a food, and drinking is something that is liquid. But ultimately, anything that is purposely swallowed, this is considered to be food or drink in the definitions of the scholars. So if that's the meaning of it, then why is it that we say eating and drinking? Why don't we say swallowing anything? And the answer is that this is what the linguists refer to as kharaja makhraj al-ghalib. Kharaja makhraj al-ghalib. This is something that is mentioned because it is usually What is swallowed is food or drink, and so we call it eating or drinking. This is what is most usually swallowed, but it's not the only thing that is swallowed. A person could swallow medicine, a person could swallow something that is not food, right? Also, a person could inhale something, such as smoke or bakhur or cigarette smoke or whatever it is. All of these things will break a person's fast. Why? Because they are swallowing it. It is going down the throat. Now, whether it goes into the lungs or goes into the stomach, this is inconsequential. What is meant is that it goes past the back of the mouth down into the throat or through the nose down into the throat. Anything that makes its way down the throat, this is what will break a person's fast. And so from this, we have food or drink, obviously. We have that which is taken like a nasal spray, for instance. This will break a person's fast. And this isn't something new. One of the ways that the Prophet ﷺ taught the companions to administer medicine using black seed is by way of the nose. This is the most correct way to administer black seed. We know that the Prophet ﷺ tells us in authentic narrations that black seed is a cure for all ailments except for death, except for poison, right? Now, there are many ways to take black seed, but the most prominent way in the Prophet's Sunnah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is that it be taken through the nose, that it be dripped into the nose, go through the sinuses, and then down the throat. This is how the companions, radiyallahu anhum, usually would take black seed. But the scholars mention 7 ways to administer black seed, and the most prominent of them is through the nose. This also, and eating and drinking, that's not something that really is taken through the nose. You don't eat or drink something through the nose. You eat or drink through the mouth. So how did we come to the conclusion that the nose is also a way for a person to break his fast? Well, there's a narration in which the Prophet ﷺ taught the companions wudu. Wudu. He said, in teaching them wudu, one of the companions, he said, وَبَالِغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ. What is istinshaq? التنشق. Tanashuk is taking through the nose. It is snorting. Okay? So he says, وَبَالِغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ, meaning, be thorough in snorting the water for wudu. إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا, except if you are fasting. Now notice this wording here. This narration is critical because it teaches us that the nose is a valid path of food and drink, or what would be considered food and drink for our intents and purposes. So he's saying, وَبَالِغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا. He says, and exaggerate in snorting the water for wudu unless you are fasting. If you are fasting, then do not. That's what we understand from the hadith. Except if you are fasting, what's understood? Meaning, if you're fasting, don't exaggerate in snorting the water for wudu. Why? Because it may compromise your wudu. That's the only understanding of the narration. And so the scholars cite this narration as evidence that a person would break his fast by snorting. Why? Because anything that is snorted through the nose, it will go down into the throat and compromise a person's fasting. So then a question comes up. It's like, well, if that's the yardstick, then what about eye drops, right? And this is important because the eyes are a kind of mucous membrane. They produce tears, and the ducts from the eyes empty out into the throat, right? So if you were to use eye drops or put something in your eye, if there's enough of it, you could taste it or feel it in your throat. So is that something that would break a person's fast? Eye drops. And we would say, no. It is a very weak opinion. Some scholars have mentioned it, but it is a very weak argument that eye drops would break a person's fast. Why? Even though it goes through the throat, why is it such a weak argument? Well, it's a weak argument for a number of reasons. Number one, there's no mention of it anywhere in the Sunnah. Imagine with me hundreds, thousands of companions in Medina, the most rigorous Muslims that have ever walked this earth. There will never be a generation of collective of Muslims that care more about doing right and avoiding mistakes in their religion than the companions of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They will never exist. They are the most righteous, they are the most cautious, and they are the most knowledgeable of any companion of any prophet or messenger ever. And we don't have any time in which the Prophet ﷺ told them that this would break their fast, and no instance in which they asked, and no instance in which they, in their fatwa to the following generation, told people that this would break their fast. So then someone would say, well, you know, maybe they didn't have eye drops at that time. That is a very silly argument because, of course, they had eye drops in their time. It may not have been sold by CVS. It wasn't sold by Walgreens. It didn't come with a tamper-proof packaging. But yes, they used eye drops, they used kuhl, and not only that, but it's a type of prophetic medicine. Who knows one of the most important things for correcting vision in the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Tell us. Anyone? الكحل؟ كحل الإيش؟ الإثمد أو الإرمد. نعم. There is a type of kuhl. Kuhl is, it's a type of stone that is ground down. It's a very particular type of stone. It is ground down into a fine powder, okay? And there's different types of it. And often it is used for beauty, right? It's used to accentuate the eyes, make the eyes look bigger. But not always. Some types of kuhl are therapeutic. And in the narration of Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, he said, عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْإِثْمِدِ فَإِنَّهُ يَجْلُ الْبَصَرِ وَيُنْبِتُ الشَّعْرِ. He said, I urge you to use ithmid, and especially before going to sleep at night, because it sharpens vision and helps to, and it also helps to grow out the eyelashes. It encourages eyelash growth, right? So Al-ithmid is a very specific type of rock. Usually it comes from areas in North Africa, like Morocco or Aljazair, Algeria, Tunisia, these areas. And al-ithmid, you'll know it when you see it because it is more gray than it is black, and it looks like it has it looks like it has glitter in it. That's what it looks like. When you put it up in the light, it sparkles almost like glitter, but it is gray. It's not like this color. It's gray, like Brother Maqsood's shirt there. This is called al-ithmid, and it's pretty expensive, right? I used it for many years for my eyesight, and I can testify that yes, it is very, very good. I've never had as good eyesight as I did when I was using al-ithmid every night when I was in the Caribbean. I had actually, someone went to Morocco. I said, look, there's ithmid there. I need you to bring it for me. And it was a little bottle this big. It was very expensive for me. It was like $300 at that time. This was almost 20 years ago. It might as well have been $3 million for me at that time, because that was a lot of money for me. And I used it for years, and it was very, very good. Every night before you go to sleep. And the Prophet ﷺ would use it very often. He would use it 3 times in the right and 2 times in the left. You could go to an Islamic shop, a Muslim store, what we used to call them Muslim stores, and you'll find this kuhl in a little box, and it's got, Urdu written on it or Arabic written on it, and it's called ithmid, and you get a big bottle like this, and it's very jet black, right? And it actually, a lot of these cheap knockoff ithmid have lead in them. So not only is that bad for your eyes, but it's pretty bad for your brain as well. However, real ithmid is very critical part of the Prophet's sunnah. He used it all the time. And most of the Imams of Islam in those earlier generations and the companions, most of his companions, men and women, all used ithmid kuhl, right? As a matter of fact, it was so ubiquitous and so common that Imam Malik was asked why he doesn't use it, because he didn't used to use al-ithmid. And the reason that he didn't use it wasn't because, he wasn't following the sunnah. It was because, of the general implications at that time. It was for a different reason. So the point is that this is something that was extremely commonplace. Could you imagine the Prophet ﷺ in Ramadan? His companions come to see him during the day of Ramadan, and they have kuhl in their eyes, and it would break their fast, and he never says anything about it? Is that reasonable? Like, he sees that they're clearly using kuhl while they're fasting in their eyes, but then he doesn't say anything about it. He doesn't mention it. He doesn't say, don't do that, this will break your fast. He never said that. So we understand from his silence that it is something that does not break your fast. And actually, when you're using al-ithmid, kuhl, when you first put it in, you can very clearly taste it in your throat. If you spit, it will come out in your saliva as well, if you put enough. And so, this is something that most of the companions used, probably all of the women used, and the Prophet ﷺ, in all of his sunnah, in 9 years of fasting Ramadan, in 14 years of fasting Ashura and other types of fast, and never once did he mention that this breaks your fast. But then 200-300 years later, we start to say, well, you know, it would break your fast. Very weak argument, very weak. And for this reason, the majority of scholars do not hold this opinion that anything administered to the eye, whether it is eye drops or kuhul or anything else, whether it's for therapy or it is for cosmetic purposes, it will not break a person's fast. Nor the ear. The ear is also something that goes into the throat, right? That's why doctors are ear, nose, and throat doctors, because they're all connected there. And nothing that is administered into the ear will break a person's fast. Even if you feel the taste in your throat or feel something in your throat, it's very negligible. And this is an important point, and we'll end with this point, and that is that which is extremely negligible but is hard to avoid. Okay? So Allah describes Islam as وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Al-haraj is Allah has negated that He has placed any haraj, any undue or unnecessary difficulty or inconvenience upon us in our religion, right? And so one of the types of haraj is something that is negligible, but it is also very hard to avoid. This will not break a person's fast. Like what? So for instance, when a person makes wudu, you put the water in your mouth, right? And you spit it out. When you spit this water out, did every last little tiny microscopic bit of water come out of your mouth with that? Huh? Is there any narrations where he would make wudu and then spend the next 5 minutes spitting to get everything out? Don't swallow after making wudu for 5 minutes. Huh? Were they walking around with cans that they were spitting in after wudu? Right? No. Why? There is a minuscule, an infinitesimal amount of water that will invariably go down a person's throat after making wudu. But it is negligible and it is almost unavoidable. You notice that the two parts here. Not just negligible, but also what? Unavoidable. Those two together make al-haraj. If we were commanded to avoid that which is unavoidable and negligible, this would be the exact definition of haraj, right? Therefore, that which is negligible and unavoidable, this is not counted. Same thing with, for instance, a person's clothing. If you were so careful to never get any kind of najasa on your clothes, right? But you're living in the world with people, right? You're sitting down in a place where a dog could have sat. You're drinking from a well that something could have fallen into. Right? Is it not conceivable that there is some slight, tiny amount of najasa involved in that? Yes. You go into a restroom or you go to use the restroom and there's tiny amount of najasa that gets onto your person or onto. This is something which is tiny, infinitesimal, tiny, negligible, and it is almost unavoidable. Therefore, it is haraj. Islam overlooks that, right? And from this reasons, you'll see in the fatwa of the scholars that they do not consider an inhaler for asthma to break a person's fast. This will not break a person's fast. Why? Didn't we say that smoking, and didn't we say, yes, but it is what? Negligible, and it is unavoidable. Therefore, it is what? Overlooked. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. There's a very big difference between an inhaler, which it is gaseous, but it will become a liquid when it gets into the throat. You will taste it, right? But how much of that is actually there? Tiny, tiny, minuscule amounts. Less than when you make wudu, right? And it goes into the lungs. Therefore, it does not break a person's fast. Very different than smoking. Smoking is a big amount, and it is avoidable, right? And it is, therefore, it is not of al-haraj. Therefore, it will break a person's fast. So this is a good point to take. Yes, we'll end with this, inshallah. It would if a person needed to break their fast for it. But it doesn't. Like, it is a type of illness. And if a person had to take like some kind of liquid form that goes into the stomach, or a person had to take some kind of pill or something, yeah, it's a valid reason to break a person's fast. But just the inhaler as it is, no. Right? Yes. Right, so we mentioned the threshold here is the throat, not the mouth, not the nose, because both we use to make wudu. For this reason, Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, in his fatawa, mentions that tasting does not break a person's fast. This is something that companions used to do. They were cooking, whatever, you go to the market, you taste something and then spit it out. This is fine. And it has the same ruling as making wudu. No different. Same thing with like bakhur, for instance. Let's say I walk into a room that has bakhur in it. Right? That's smoke. And I'm going to taste it in my mouth. Will it break my wudu? Or break my fast? No. Because it's unintentional, and it's something that's being put onto you. Right? Contrary to me lighting bakhur and then putting my thing over it and sucking it in, this will break a person's wudu. The scholars have noted this specifically as breaking wudu, breaking a person's fast. Yes. Right? All these things were around. I mean, you know, we like to think we're special. Our time, we have so much stuff they didn't have back then. No, they had most of it. 99%. Right? Now, yeah, as long as you don't intentionally go to inhale a big amount, right? But if I were to light bakhur in the masjid or in my room, is that permissible? Yes, permissible. It doesn't break a person's fast. So we will stop there, inshallah. We'll continue tomorrow. There's still more to talk about with regards to eating and drinking. A whole other aspect that I didn't get into. We'll talk about it tomorrow, inshallah. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى بمنه وكرمه وجوده أن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وأن ينفعنا بما علمنا وأن يفقهنا في ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأن يحفظنا وأن يجعلنا قرة أعين وأن يهب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وأن يجعلنا للمتقين إماما والله أعلم صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. Yeah, just